Good evening. A major GB News investigation has uncovered the shocking truth about Sharia law in Britain, where virgins don't even have to give verbal consent to marry a man, and women are treated like second-class citizens. Britain was already the Sharia court capital of the Western world, with around 90 Sharia courts operating here. Tonight, we can reveal that there are Sharia-based law firms now operating in the UK. GB News has found examples of how women are treated like lower-class citizens, and this should probably serve as a warning to all of those left-wing, open-border 18 to 30-year-old women out there. The Al-Azhari Centre in London advertises Islamic marriage contracts, which it says comply with Sharia law, while its guidance states that a bride's consent is a prerequisite for marriage. It is far from clear how that consent is meaningfully established in practice. For example, it suggests that explicit spoken consent from the bride is only required if she is a non-virgin. It goes on to state that where the bride is a virgin, her silence is considered as implicit agreement, which raises serious questions about whether genuine, freely given consent is indeed being properly recognised at all. So, look, we've seen things like this going on around the world.
My father has sold me because we don't have bread, rice and flour. He has sold me to an old man. The white-bearded man who claims he's 55 years old comes to collect her. He's bought Parwana for 200,000 Afghanis, just over $2,000 US. Covered up, Parwana whimpers as her mother holds her. "This is your bride, please take care of her," says Parwana's father. "Of course I will take care of her," replies the man. His large hands grab her small frame. Parwana tries to pull away. As he carries her only bag of belongings, she again resists, digging her heels into the dirt. But it's futile.
So we've looked at things like that going on around the world, and we've thought, yes, let's import that into Britain. Fantastic, isn't it? I mean, good grief. The Islamic Sharia Council, which describes itself as the first Sharia council established in Europe and the Americas, sets out starkly different processes for Islamic divorce, depending on whether the applicant is a man or a woman. Under its guidance on Islamic divorce, when initiated by a man, the council states that the husband may divorce her either verbally or in writing, with the decision ultimately resting on him alone. But if it's the woman who wants to get divorced because their husband's a complete lunatic maniac, well, a woman seeking an Islamic divorce must apply to a council and attach the main reasons for her request. The process requires her husband to be contacted and given the opportunity to respond, and then it may involve a mediation or a panel of scholars who get to make the meeting and make the decision. Mediation, while merely recommended in cases initiated by men, is described as an integral part of cases brought by women. Guidance warns that cases may be delayed or even closed if the wife does not engage with the process. So, look, do you remember when President Trump said this?
I look at London, where you have a terrible mayor, terrible mayor, and it's been so changed. So changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law, but you're in a different country. You can't do that.
Yeah, and Sadiq Khan said this.
I think President Trump has shown he is racist, he is sexist, he is misogynistic, and he's Islamophobic.
Well, would you look at that? Because we have uncovered at least 5 Sharia councils operating in London alone. Can you imagine how many there are in places like, just pull these places at random. Bradford, Birmingham, Leicester, parts of Greater Manchester. We now live in a country where you might be locked up for sending a mean social media post, but if you set up a Sharia court and marry off a virgin without her consent, that, my friends, is just cultural enrichment. Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
We've got Popular Conservatives director Mark Littlewood, Jack Anderson, the political commentator, and we also have journalist and broadcaster Nina Mishkov. Right, Mark, OK, so, yeah, I mean, look, the Sharia courts, the Sharia law firms, they're very much up and running in this country, especially in the capital.
Yeah, look, it's a tricky one, this, Patrick, isn't it? Because you can't look at the GB News report, I think, and feel anything other than deeply uneasy and queasy about what's happening. That said, how do we unpick this? Because it's a core principle of English law and the basic freedoms of this country that you can, if you're an adult, pretty much enter into any contractual arrangement you want, whether this is Islamic, whether it's Christian, a business deal, whether it's for the Church of the Giant Spaghetti God, you pick your, you choose your poison. So I think it's tricky to unpick this without unpicking a whole range of other things like Jewish courts. So how could we stem it? I think the first thing to say is that Sharia-approved marriages would not count as marriages in English law, so it just doesn't count. And the second is to put in place robust procedures, which I think are wholly missing at the moment, for women or those under the age of 18, where consent should be assumed not to exist, or all women who feel that they are being arm-twisted or acting without consent. We have endless hotlines, don't we, for have you seen something suspicious, have you seen terrorist activity? We have Childline. I think we need to provide that sort of service for Islamic women here. I
mean, I think what we're seeing here, though, Jack, is yet more examples of the way that a lot of women are treated in aspects of the Muslim communities around Britain, right? And when are people going to wake up to this? When are people, especially because the biggest cohort of hard left in this country is 18 to 30-year-old women. And you think, what are you going into bat for here, really?
Yeah, and I think your wider point is correct, which is that we have imported potentially millions of people who, at the same time, have imported their own culture, their own way of life, and their own way of doing things. They've essentially replicated Muslim countries here, which is what they've done with these Sharia courts. And that really is the crux of it, and I think that's why it's such a difficult issue to solve, because fundamentally it's the people that are responsible for this. And it's what do you do? And, there are many solutions which would involve, deporting some of these people. And I think that it ultimately is somewhere where we will have to go to and explore to actually solve this problem, because fundamentally, if you don't deport the people that are operating these courts and that are operating this way of life, then things are never going to change.
Yeah, I mean, how do you feel about that? The idea that one way to solve this might be deportation. But just as well, one of the things that really stood out to me from this report was that some of the people quoted in it were saying that yes, it's Sharia law does not supersede British law, but the problem is that a lot of people who go to these Sharia courts might not know that, and also they might not care, because if for you your higher power and your higher law is, in this case, obviously it would be Allah, right? Then actually that is the most important thing for you, isn't it? Not British law. So it's a tricky one to kind of counter, I think.
It's an extreme example of how women have been put down by men for centuries and still are being. I would have thought that horrible, distressing situation with that little girl, I assume that was Afghanistan.
It was, yeah.
You know, if something like that were to happen here, the law would step in, because that's child rape, and that would not be allowed to happen.
Well, hang on. You say that. If our legal forces are acting properly, why have we got the grooming gang scandal all over? I mean, this has not only happened once. This has happened thousands upon thousands of times.
Should. I'm saying should.
But the will doesn't seem to be there, does it?
They have the powers to do it. But Mark is right. It's very complex. If you look, there are Jewish courts. There's the Beth Din. I was looking at a report on television, I think it was last night or the night before, where the Orthodox Jews in Stamford Hill were having a kind of a protesting music festival, and the female reporter was on a kind of a perch high above, and she said, "I'm not allowed to go down there because I'm a woman. I can't report, but I'm reporting from up here." Now that is again segregation, and that to me is something that I would not tolerate, but that's what they do in their religion. That's what they believe. So, as you say, how do you unpick the one from the other? Because
the thing is, as well, is there are. I always get this wrong. I mean, roughly speaking, there's 47 Muslim countries, I think, in the world, something like that. If you want to go and live under Sharia law, there are plenty of places you can go. Why do you want to bring that with you here? Do you not think it's just a bit rude?
Well, I can see that. And I think there is a particular problem with assimilation amongst the Islamic community. The assimilation has been far worse than amongst other communities. But again, do we take the same problem with people who practice the Hindu religion here? I mean, we let them get on with it. We don't say to British Jews, why don't you move to Israel? We allow them to practice Judaism.
I think the key point is, there are 250,000 Jews in this country. There are more than 4 million Muslims, and it's only growing. So I think that they're not quite equal comparisons.
That is true, but that's a quantitative, not a qualitative difference.
That's irrelevant to me.
How many Jews would there have to be here before you felt uncomfortable? 500,000? 1 million?
Well, I don't feel
it's not uncomfortable.
So it could be a limitless number of Jews, but a limited number of Muslims.
No, what I'm saying is that the Muslim community is actively growing. That is the point, whereas the Jewish population has remained...
So
would you be worried if the Jewish population was growing?
Yes.
You'd be worried if the Jewish population was growing?
If it was replacing British culture, absolutely.
Oh,
yes.
goodness me.
Okay, well,
goodness me, that's a very strange thing to say.
Absolutely. I don't think it's a strange thing to say.
It is a strange thing to say.
I don't think it's a strange thing to say.
No, because you are saying that anything other than white British C of E English.
I think it's about whether or not. I suppose it's about what becomes the dominant culture, isn't it? I think
whether it's assimilated. I think there is a difference here. That if I was comparing and contrasting, big broad brush, Hindus with Muslims, big broad brush.
Yep.
More or less speaking, the Hindu community is assimilated considerably better than the Islamic community. Broad brush generalisation, but I think a true one. Generalisations can be true, even if not wholly accurate. Now, I think the worry here, Patrick, you touched on it, is are there large numbers of people operating under the illusion that this is the law, not a custom or a practice, but some sort of binding law? And is there a lack of consent? Those seem to me the two big questions that don't appear to apply to, let's say, Jewish courts, where there is consent, and I think there is a complete understanding that it doesn't out-trump English law. And what GB News have exposed here is two big worries that I think are unique to Sharia law in this instance.
And actually, I didn't include this in the monologue, but I kind of wish I had done, actually. I was casting my mind back to when ISIS were really in their pomp, and we actually at one point had a higher number of returning ISIS jihadis than Saudi Arabia.
Jeez.
We had one of the highest numbers of people who left this country, having been born here, to go and fight for ISIS abroad and then come back again. We are now the Western capital for Sharia courts. We've got Sharia law firms opening up, really. And I seriously think people aren't aware of the scale of the hard line, isn't this problem that we have in this country?
Do you have any idea of numbers, of actual numbers of how many people are involved?
In the Sharia courts thing? Well, it's difficult to gauge, isn't it, really? I mean, if we've got, roughly speaking, 90 Sharia courts, but I don't know how many scholars all sit around and do it, but, I mean, they're catering for someone, aren't they? So,
yes,
I mean,
that's a relatively small percentage of 4 million people.
Mm-hmm.
It's a small percentage. I mean, you're always going to get extremes on either side, and that it's abhorrent to me. But the question is, what does the government do about it? What can the government do about it? If they are perpetrating acts that actually are breaking the law in this country, would be.
Well, that, I think,
that's
is the key thing, Nina. What I would like to see is a culture in which we don't tiptoe around it. And the tiptoeing around of everything to make sure you're not called out as a racist or an Islamophobe, as I'm afraid, classically in the Grimming Gang scandal, led to horror. So at the very least, let's not be politically correct about tackling this. Let's be honest about it. And if we think it's happening, and I think GB News have provided some very interesting prima facie evidence, let's investigate that without fear or favour. And so far, all of these investigations and policies have been done with fear and with favour.
We wouldn't. If there was another group, for the sake of argument, white middle class Brits who were routinely going around marrying virgins without the virgin having to offer any form of verbal consent.
The authorities would be all over it.
I think that there might be more questions being asked about this.
As a woman, I'd just like to say this is just a very extreme example of what women have suffered. I mean, and are still suffering. A totalitarian state of men in some cases. Look at the United States, where women don't have autonomy over their own bodies, where abortions are illegal.
Okay.
That's that to me is just as that affects more women than this.
Okay. All right.